He wants to clap. Now is the time to do it. Let's hear some claps. Good morning. My name is Dorsey Atkinson. I'm the pastor here, and I'm glad that you're here today. I'm going to be carrying this cup around not because Georgia Southern has won again. But I've been up in Atlanta recently and went to a conference up there, and there was a lot of fog machines and stuff like that, and it's played havoc on my sinuses. So I'm just going to take some decongestant, and you know how that does. It doesn't just dry you out here. It dries you out everywhere. I want to keep my voice. So anyway, there's my apology to begin with. But are you happy to be here today? Are you glad to be here? Man, let me tell you something. We are coming to the conclusion of a message series that's been going on for several weeks, and it's the 100-Acre Wood Congregation. And during this time, we have been talking about the various characters of the Winnie the Pooh book, or the Winnie the Pooh movie, which this is the new movie that just came out. How many of you got a chance to see that movie? Anybody got a chance to see that? Am I the only one? 2, 3? Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Listen, go see this movie whenever it gets a chance, whenever it comes out on that Hulu, Blu-ray, whatever it comes out on. I don't know all those letters or YouTube or whatever. Watch this movie. It's really good. It'll be worth your time. But in this message series, we've been talking about the various characters that make up the 100-Acre Wood story and how they take on the dynamics of various people in our congregations today. And what we found is that there's some Tiggers in the congregation. Do we have any Tiggers in the congregation here today? Any people full of energy, just wide open? Yeah, Joel, you are definitely right here. This is a Tigger right here. Okay? And what I was going to say is that the Tiggers tend to bounce around and do stuff and get energetic, and they go wide open and everything, and they knock everything over in their way, and they don't realize they're doing it, and they just don't, they just sometimes are rude. Not that Joel's rude, but they sometimes just, it's all about them. Not that Joel's like it all about him. But they're like that. How many? And then there's the opposite end of that, and that would be, what's the opposite of Tigger? What would you say that'd be? Eeyore. And how are they? They're like, now I'm not going to point any Eeyores out here in this congregation, but now Preston, you can't be both. That's called bipolar. If you're both, there's something going on there. Maybe you can be, I don't know. But anyway, but the point I'm making is that there's some Eeyores in there that's always sad. When you talk to them, there's always something negative. It's just a bad day, and everything's down. And then there's the Kangas. The Kangas are the nurturers. We got some nurturers in the house. They love on people, and they care for people. They answer the questions that you ask 1,000 times, and they don't get upset, and they continue to teach her. And if you're one of those people that asked all the questions, and you're a Roo, because Roo is all about asking questions, wanting to explore life, wanting to enjoy life. And then there's the Rabbits, who are all about structure, got to have an order. They think they're the leader, but they may not be the leader, but they're all about all those things like structure and organization and things like that. And when things don't go in order, they sort of get weirded out. And then there's the Owls. I think I'm growing into being an owl. An owl is one of those people who know a lot, but they tend to mix the stories up sometimes. They get them sort of confused, and they might tie this story from one thing to another and all, but we learn to love those. Those are in the congregation. Who did we miss? Piglet, who's what? What's Piglet's thing? Fear, and he's afraid of almost everything and afraid of almost just all kinds of things. And last week we talked about Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie the Pooh we talked about who had a different perspective, a different view on life. Winnie the Pooh believed all things are possible. He was probably could be considered a Christian. He believed that all things are possible, not through his strength, but through someone else's, or what we as Christians believe, all things are possible through God. That God makes all things possible for us. And we talked about that last week. This week we're going to talk about Christopher Robin. We're going to talk about Christopher Robin, who hangs out with all these characters and handles all the situations going on. But I want to talk about not the Christopher Robins like this, but the Christopher Robin that is the adult Christopher Robin. In this movie, the premise of this movie is that Christopher Robin tells Pooh, I'll never forget you, when he's a little fella. I'll never forget you. Well, what if you go away? And what if I'll never forget you. And what we find was that Christopher Robin in this movie forgot, not only Christopher Robin forgot not only Winnie the Pooh and the other characters, he forgot who he was. In fact, he got so caught up in work and so caught up in the things of life and doing things that were just being a grown-up, if you will. What's things that happen that are different when you're grown? Somebody shout out some things. What's the difference in being a grown-up and a child? What are some things that concern you as an adult? Taxes. What? Bills. What? Responsibility. Insurance. What'd you say? You said something. What'd you say? Oh, you didn't say it. Well, then say something now. You can save it. Job. What else? Anything? Driving? Okay, driving. Oh, you got a daughter that's fixing to get ready to drive. Yeah, no, I'm teasing. No, but driving. All kinds of things come on. Well, I want a job. What am I going to do? Where am I going to live? Housing. All of these things are just responsibilities you don't worry about when you're a kid. You know what you worry about when you're a child? I want to go play. I want to go have fun. Do you worry about what's for supper? Now, if you're in some locations and you don't have food in your area, and some people in this world live in a time, and unfortunately it's still in a time where people struggle with having food, have enough means to make their only daily lives go on. But even at that, what I found, and I've worked and done mission trips in very impoverished areas. Those kids, when they play, are focused on play. They try to make the best they can with what they got, and they're not worried about their clothes at that point. It's play, it's joy, it's finding fun in life. And so what happens was Christopher Robin lost that. He lost perspective of those things, and he got to be an adult. He had a wife, and he had a child, and he was working in this big company in this movie the way it went. And as he was working in this big company, he got consumed with all this stuff, and he was supposed to have a retreat. He'd made promises to his wife, made promises to his daughter over and over about spending time with them, doing things with them, and I'll do it another day. And they had this big retreat to the woods or to a cottage planned, and he had to work that weekend. And his wife says to him, life is happening right now, right in front of you. You ever felt like that? That life is happening right now, right in front of you, and stuff is going on in your life that is so consuming to you, you can't even see life. You can't even see things. Now, you guys know, some of you that's been here for a while, my daughter's getting married next weekend, or this coming weekend. Now, yay, yeah, you're not the daddy of the bride, but yay. So there is a lot of worry, concern, a lot of things going on that I'm not saying it's taking the joy out of life or anything, but let me tell you, it's robbed me of a couple things. And if you don't believe, I'll show you my wallet and my credit card statements and everything else. But my point is that some things that I'm trying to stay focused on this time is being in the moment. Being in this moment with her. I don't want to hear Jody come up to me like Chris Rock. Life is happening right in front of you and you're missing it. And I'm doing that. I'm trying to do that to the best of my degree that I can, to my best of my ability. But then this story, Christopher Robin says this. He's having a conversation with Pooh, and he says, I'm not who I used to be. Have you ever felt like that too? Not that life is happening right in front of you, but that you're not who you used to be. Now, I'm not saying that you're not a better person, you're a wiser person, you're not a better looking person. Some of you, that's a stretch of the imagination, but you could be better looking. You could keep dreaming that. It could happen. But you're just not who you used to be. And Pooh says this to him. Pooh, the genius, says this. You just need to remember who you are. See, interesting. He says, I'm lost. I'm not who I used to be. And he's like, it's not about who you used to be. It's like you just need to be who you are. But there were some things missing. And one of the things that I found in my life, one of the things that I found that has caused me to become lost, one of the things that has caused me to lose the joy of life is this one word right here, which represents so much. Worry. The word is worry. Worry sucks the life out of me. It chokes the life out of me. I don't think it sucks it out of me. I just think the life is in there, and the worries of this world, the worries of all these things just choke it out, and I can't breathe, and it's like an elephant sitting on your chest sometimes. And I think that worry in many of our lives, worry about where am I going to be? What am I going to be doing next week? What am I going to do about these bills? Worried about my children. Worried about when your children get to be adults. Worrying about my parents when they get older. What's going to happen? And you worry about all these things. Worried about my grades. Let me tell you something. One of the things, a lot of people worry about their grades. And I'll talk about this in a little bit. But we need to be concerned about our grades in school. Concerned enough to study. You understand? We need to be worried about our finances. But we need to be concerned about our finances that we discipline ourselves in some areas of our life. How many of you have ever been in this position where you've gone to buy something before and you're trying to justify buying it and all this, and you really, really, really want it bad? And then you start to figure out what the bills are, and then you say this, I'll worry about that later. Anybody ever said that phrase before? I'll worry about that later. Okay, there's a lot of us that we all give. I've done that before. I've been in my life. But the truth is, we are going to worry about it later. Because many times we aren't disciplined in the present. But I'm not going to talk about that. I just want to talk to you about the difference right now between concern and worry. So you got worry on one hand, you got concern on the other. I would tell you that concern is driven by love. When you're concerned about something, it's driven by love. When you're worried about something, it's driven by fear. And there's a difference. Fear of what's going to happen. Fear, you become Piglet. You become Piglet. Piglet wasn't concerned about things. Piglet was worried about things. He worried. He was consumed with it to the fear drove him so much he would just be paralyzed and freeze. I would say that the positive side or the healthy side of being concerned is it promotes constructive action. When you're concerned about something, you do something about it. You get active about it. When you worry about something, it paralyzes you and you don't move. You just get caught in this infinite loop. I don't know what that is, but I remember that in computers one day. There's something that you just get in this loop and you just can't get out. It's an infinite loop. It just goes on. It's a circle. I can't get out of it. I think that when you're concerned about something, on the healthy side of concern, it strengthens your relationships. However, worry will weaken your relationships. It will affect everyone around you. Concern means that it's about, you're concerned about somebody and your well-being and you're concerned, and so you do something, but worrying about them and worrying about your children and worrying about your parents and worrying about this and worrying about your girlfriend, worrying about your boyfriend, worrying about this. It weakens the relationship. When you're concerned about something or have that healthy concern, your goal is to help. Your goal is to make a difference. When you're worried about something, you have no goal. You're just worrying. There's no way out. Or it seems that there is a way out. Concerned or healthy concern, you're focused on others, but yet when you're worried and in that unhealthy state, it's all about you. I worried about my father dying. 3 years ago, he passed away. Another lady and I were having a conversation at the other campus before I came over here. And we were talking about that, and her father died of Alzheimer's, and my father died of Alzheimer's several years ago. And I was worried about that. You understand what I'm saying? Worried about it. But the worry that I had, what am I going to do without my daddy? What am I going to do without my dad? See, it was self-centered. I was worried about me, and I wasn't as much worried about what he was going through. And if I had concern, it would have been more healthy at that time. But I was in that state of struggling with what am I going to do if that happens. See, I would say that worry at its core is a trust issue. Do we trust God? That's what's at the core of worry. In fact, I believe it's one of the most selfish activities that we can engage in is worry. Now, Jesus addressed this. Jesus addressed this because, and let me tell you where this story is going to go, where this scripture passage is going to come from. Jesus is talking to insiders when he's talking and telling this conversation that I'm about to read to you in Matthew. Jesus is talking to insiders. He's talking to religious people. Religious people at that time would have been they could have been various religions, but he was talking to a specific religious group of Jews. Those who had been brought up with the historical, what we would call Old Testament writings and the teachings and the rabbis' teachings about how the Yahweh, the one God, was the only God. And they would have been brought up on how the scriptures of that time would say how to serve Him, how to love Him. They would have been brought up with dietary restrictions, what you can eat and what you can't eat. You understand what I'm saying? You can eat these category of animals, but you can't eat these category of animals. They would have been brought up with how you dress and how you look and all of the rules and regulations. You know, when I grew up, there was never a rule of what you had to wear going to church, but we had this phrase called you had to wear your Sunday's best. Anybody ever heard that phrase, your Sunday best? And if it was a suit or if it was something that you wore your Sunday's best. I was raised around some farming communities and they all would come out from working or they'd come out at a meal in the textile factories in their jeans. They'd go home and put on slacks and things like this and they put on their Sunday best to go to church. And it almost felt like when I was growing up, if I didn't have my Sunday best on that I couldn't go to church. You understand what I'm saying? And so the attire that you wore affected me growing up of what it was to go to church. And for this insider group, Jesus is having a conversation with them because the rules and the regulations and how to do things and all the things that the religious leaders were telling them were beginning to cause them to worry. Because they had associated that how they dressed, what they wore, what they ate, had an effect on their eternal relationship with God. And so Jesus, in this conversation, tells them this in Matthew 6. He says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life." Now he says this right after this, so he's going to describe what life is that he's talking about. What you will eat or drink, or don't worry about your body. And what does he mean by that? What you will wear. Is not life more than food and body more than clothes? So what he's saying is, all these rules and regulations, you keep thinking these rules and regulations, these things that if you do this or don't eat this and all this, is what it's all about. That's what life is about. If what you wear or how you dress when you go to church, that's what it's about. Now again, he's not talking to unbelievers. There was unbelievers there. There were people who didn't believe that he was the Son of the one God. There was people that didn't believe. They didn't believe in God. They might have believed in all kinds of things. Many gods. But he's talking to these insiders. So I'm thinking I'm talking to insiders today. See, many of you in this room here today, and you may not be, and if you're not, and that's okay, but for many of you in this room, you believe there is one God. You believe that he had a son named Jesus Christ, or Jesus of Nazareth. You believe that Son of God came to earth to die for the sins of humanity, which we could never do to reconcile ourselves back with God. So he made this tremendous sacrifice and gave his life up for us. That 3 days after his death, he was resurrected. He was brought back to life and taken back to heaven. And there he sits to judge and determine and to lead us and guide us. And he sent us the Holy Spirit. So if you're in that category and you believe that and you have that faith in that, this is the category of people I'm talking to. And so it's saying to you, all these rules and regulations about what it is to be religious, all these rules and things that you've been taught about what it is, of what you should look like and how you should walk and talk and say and things like that, you're worrying about that too much. Jesus even goes on to say, he says, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in a barn, yet your heavenly Father, he feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they? And then he says this to us. Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Think about that. Can you add a single hour to your life with all the worries that you've done? Think about all the times that you've worked on something, a decision you had to make, where I'm going to live, what the job I'm going to take, what am I going to do, the next thing I'm going to do next week, how am I going to pay, and all the things that have consumed you. Can I have a child? Will I have a child? How am I going to raise a child? Whatever it is this the girl for me? Is this the guy for me? Should I be in this relationship? Whatever that is, the worry and all the time that you invested in that loop, did it add to your life? Where's it put you? And what did it rob you of? And then he goes on, he talks about, and why do you worry about your clothes? Do you see the fields, the flowers of the fields? They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow, and is thrown in the fire, will he not much more clothe you? And then he says this phrase, you of little faith. See, it's a trust issue. See, worry is an extension of our trust. Do we trust God? Do we trust God? So he goes on, he says, do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? Do not worry about how will I follow all these rules, or what are the rules? Are the rules right, or whatever? He's saying, quit worrying about that and be in the moment. Life is happening in front of you now, and you're so worried about the rules, the regulations, what to wear and how to do, and am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? That you're paralyzed. You're so worried about the religious things that you do that you don't even have time to have a conversation with God in prayer. You're so concerned about all these religious things. I'm not talking about all the other worries. I'm talking about the things of church that you're concerned about, the things of the kingdom that you're worried about. Am I saved? Am I not saved? Is this? And should I do this? And these people are saying that, and you get so consumed that you don't even take the time to pray. You don't even take the time to read your Bible. You don't even take the time to have private time with God. You take no time for yourself. And what happens is the kingdom suffers. Not just your kingdom, that that's what you're serving at that point, or I'm serving at that point, but the kingdom of God suffers because we've turned internally focused. He finishes up with verse 33 saying, "But seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you." I just want that to soak. When you seek God's kingdom, when you seek God's kingdom and you seek God's righteousness, not what man says is right, but what does God say is right? What is God? You got to have a conversation with him to sort of know that. But he says, when you do this, then all these things about what to wear, the dietary restrictions or whatever they are, the rules and regulations, all that will be given to you. You'll figure all that out. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Now, Jesus, in another gospel, another writer writes about this in Mark. And he writes a story, and Jesus tells a story about a parable, a story that he made up to demonstrate this truth. And he's talking about several truths, but he talks about this farmer goes out and he scatters seeds out, throws seeds out all over the place to grow some crops. He wants to grow some things. He scatters them. He talks about where the seed falls. And he talks about the different areas that the seed falls, and I'm just going to give you a couple. Let me talk about one of them. The seed falls on a hard path where people have beaten it down and, pounded it down. And because the seed couldn't go into the ground, the birds come and they ate it up. And what he was talking about, there's some people in this life that have been beaten down so much that when the word comes, when love comes to them, they don't know how to receive it. They don't know how to accept it. They don't know how to let love into them. That's a healthy love. And before they can figure it out, because nobody spends the time to toil or to cultivate them, to help break up the hardness in their life so the seed can penetrate, the birds come and eat it up. Satan comes and takes it away. So they don't have the seed. You got that? They don't have the seed. So that's one issue. Then he talks about another issue where the seed falls on a ground that has rocks underneath the surface. So it starts to grow up really good. It starts to grow up strong. But then something happens. And because it has shallow roots, when the toughness of life comes, when the harshness of life comes, it dries up because it has no depth, no roots. So what it looks good to start with, it just doesn't finish strong because of stuff going on underneath the surface. In other words, nobody spends time to dig in and invest into people and help dig out their crap of life, their stuff of life, their stuff. Because it's like we just see a little bit of growth, let's keep going and go on to the next thing, and we don't spend time with people. And so there's that category. But it dies. So the seed dies. Then he talks about this other group. And he talks about some other things, but I don't talk about this one group. He talks about this one group where the seed falls and it grows. And it begins to grow. No, the hard path has been taken care of, if that was the issue. There's no rocks underneath it, so all that's good. But here's what happens. There's these things that grow up around it. Listen to what he says. Still others, like seed thrown among the thorns, hear the word, but the worries of life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things, they come in and they choke the word, making it unfruitful. Doesn't mean the word's not in them. I want you to get that. It doesn't mean that they haven't received this good news, that it hasn't started. It's growing. But it's outside factors, not the harshness of life. It's the other things that wrap around and get a stranglehold and rob this potentially fruitful plant from being fruitful. And he calls out three things. And the first one is the worries of this life. Now, I could preach a message on the deceitfulness of wealth. We'll talk about that one day, I'm sure. and the desires for other things. You know, I want what I don't have. I want what everybody else has, and trying to meet up. You understand, those two things consume us. I mean, I'm telling you, to try to meet up to everybody else's expectations, to try to live up to what everybody else thinks, to try to live up to what my parents think rather than, you know, I'm living up to everything else. That's what other people think, so I'm living up to those things rather than what God's calling me to do. That's an issue. And that could cause problems. Not being who you are and who God called you to be. Absolutely, that'll choke you out when you're trying to be what everybody else wants you to be. You know, that's people pleasers. We try to please everybody else. But that's another category. Then he talks about those people where it's the deceitfulness of wealth. If I just have more of this, more of that, more of this, then everything will be okay. If I just have a bigger house, a bigger this, if I just have more of this, more of that, whatever it is, the deceitfulness of what's considered wealth, we'll believe that, and then that'll choke us out. So it's not that you don't have the Word. It's not that you don't have this love for God. It's just what chokes it out. So those two, but the very first one that Jesus says in this parable, which he's making a story up, but he says it in his order, is, but the worries of life. Worrying about stuff. Not being concerned about it, but being worried about things. And they rob your time with God. They rob your time with family. They rob your time with others. They rob your time of helping others. So here's where I want to try to help us with today. What can we do to combat worry? So here's what I'm saying to you. Worry is going to be out there. I think worry is just like the deceitfulness of wealth, just like the desires for other things. All that's out there. The thorns, the vines are out there. It's not about that. How do we weed our garden? And particularly, how do we weed or try to keep this worry away from us, to keep from choking us out? So here's a couple things. So if you're writing these down, here's the first one. Going to be 3. How many did I say there's going to be? Okay, I'm going to call it out to you, the first one. I want you to call it back to me, so make sure you got it. 2 words. Ready? 2 words. How many words? 2. First one. Not the first word, but the first thing. Love God. Call it back to me. Love God. Write that down, because I know you say I won't forget that, but I'm telling you, if we wouldn't forget that, then we wouldn't be having the conversation about worry to begin with. Because let me tell you something. For some of us, worry's robbed us of our time with God. It's robbed us of the quality of prayer that we have. We have a thing here that we do that's called PTWG, personal time with God. In your personal time with God, you should try to set aside a time. I don't care it's your time. You do with what you want to. But you should set aside time to just be with God. Be in prayer. Doesn't have to be big, long prayers. Doesn't have to be... I'm at the point now where, for me, my time with God, my personal time with God is not about the breadth of it, but the depth of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I want to spend time with God, but I want it to be effective and quality time. So I'm praying, and I'm praying intensely. I'm for real. I'm not just throwing up these token prayers just to spit them out and, check it off my list. I've done that. I'm like praying like God, help me. I mean, I'm for real, I pray for my family intently. I pray for you. Some of you are on my prayer list, and I put my phone somewhere. And if I got alarm set because I'm so ADD, I forget. I'm scared to death. I'm going to forget to pray about somebody I promised to pray. So I put an alarm in my phone. And I found out that I can't end them all in 7, because y'all know I was doing that for a while. Every alarm on my phone ended in a 7. Man, you can't pray that. I mean, that's just too much of a break, because I can't get my day done. So I sort of crunched them down to 1 minute, 2 minute prayers. But my point is, I'm intensely praying in that time. See, being with God, loving God, is investing in that. I would say, too, reading the Scriptures. It's not about how much you read. It's about reading and getting something out of them. How many of you have ever had a good steak or a good cut of meat? How many of you are vegetarians? You're at the wrong church. I just want to say that, because I'm teasing. No, you can be a vegetarian, be here, but I'm like, but you do this with plants. Have you ever marinated a piece of meat? Anybody ever done that? Why do you marinate meat or vegetables, which I don't know why you'd have to tell me why you marinate. But why do you marinate? To add flavor. Why can't I just spread ketchup on the top and that's good? What's the difference? I could put that sauce right on the top and it's good. I mean, I put butter on it. Nope, not butter, but I put something more healthy than butter. But anyway, but why do you marinate it? Well, why don't I marinate it like 2 minutes? Then why do we read the scriptures and we don't marinate in them? Why do we read the scriptures, say them, and then don't think any more about them? See, that's what I think meditation or marinate. We need to marinate in the Word. When we read the Word and when we just read it, I don't care if you read one sentence. I don't care if you read 2 sentences. I don't care if you read one passage. It's not about the volume. It's about marinating in it, soaking in it, letting it be a part of you. And then that changes everything. And I promise you, when you love God like that you spend time in prayer, not big prayers, but serious prayers, the real one. When you spend time in the Scriptures, not reading volumes and volumes of Scriptures, but reading that and marinating that Word, you will see your worries start to evaporate. You will be getting a grip on those vines and those thorns that are choking out the life that you've got, the joy that you have. You begin to remember who you are and whose you are when you spend some personal time with God in those ways. Second thing is, first one was love who? Second one is love others. Say that. All right, write that down. Love others. That's a simple thing to say. Love God and love others. But what does love others mean? It means do something constructive. Worry paralyzes. Move from worrying and do something constructive. Begin to serve others. Begin to help others. The other day, I was in an accident. So yes, that is my car sitting up there with the front end smashed in. It's okay. I'm okay though, but it sucks. Okay? I don't need a broken, crashed up car the week before my daughter's wedding, which I got family coming. How am I going to get them around? You think my mom, I love Charlie Cox. He's let me use that Ford Ranger, but my mom ain't going to get in that Ford Ranger in the front seat and ride with me. Now, I'm just going to tell you, I don't think both of us can fit in there. I just want to be honest with you. But my point is, I don't need this. And it wasn't. Well, technically it's my fault. Let me give you this lemony snicket series of unfortunate events. I'm pulling out of the driveway right up here, right out of the Wesley Foundation, a single-car driveway, right? And as I'm pulling out, somebody has parked on this side of the road, on my side of the road, you understand what I'm saying? Facing the stoplight, on the wrong side of the road, and parked right on the edge. Now, there's a row of trees that makes it hard to see, but when a car is there, it's like it's extremely hard to see. I mean, I would say impossible to see. I explained this to the police officer. And so I ease my car out, and I get my body, I don't think my body had gotten in there, but the front end of my car had got out there, right? But it not only distracted my view, it distracted this young lady's view coming up the hill. And I'm stopped. I can't get, I get stopped, and I see it coming, and she don't see me. And I'm trying to, boom. You got it? And I'm like, oh, crap. By the way, this is a little side note. Me and my Ronnie and Charlie, we meet on Tuesday before we go to men's group, and we pray and over our needs. And I was like, man, I'm just so distraught. I'm leveraged with this wedding. I got all this going on. I'm just praying for a sign from God. If God would just give me a sign. I just don't know. Just give me a sign of what to do. And I'm telling you, Charlie left, and I pulled out right behind it. Boom. I don't know what sign of God that is, but now, the reason I want to feel empathy for me. But in that moment, I'm worrying about everything. Is it my dollar signs are going through my mind? Is the person all right? You know, because I don't know what she looked like, you know, up close, but her eyes was that big when I saw her the last time before the hit. I'm like, boom, like that. Because I have that image in my mind. You know, I get out of my car and I go up. Ronnie, who's getting in his car, call 911. Because he's thinking I'm just parked. I mean, nope, I've been hit, call 911. And I get out and walk up to the girl who's on the phone with her mom. College girl. Her car's not damaged as much it's Jeep Wrangler. I'm just going to tell you that. They're tougher than a Trailblazer, I'm just going to tell you. So, there's a lot more plastic on mine than on hers. Hers is solid, and she's trying to tell her mama. So all of a sudden, I switched from being a victim mode and the worries, and I began to be a parent. And I began to think about what would I want to hear from somebody if my child was in an accident, other than my daughter or son crying and snot running out of their nose, and they can't see that because they're on the phone. But so I said, are you okay? And everything. And so I just start having a conversation. I'm talking to my mom. I said, it's okay. I said, I've called 911. It's all good. I said, are you hurt? Any damages? Are you feeling okay? No, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I'm saying to my mom, and it's more like, that hyperventilating thing. And I said, okay. I said, I understand that. I said, do you mind if I talk to your mama? I said, I'll talk to her. And she's like, you idiot. We just wrecked. Don't talk to my mom, but. And I just grabbed the phone. I said, ma'am, this is Dorsey Atkinson. We've been in an accident. Your daughter's in an accident. She is, and the first thing I said was, what do you want to hear as a parent? She is okay. Car's a little bit damaged. I'm okay. There was only 2 of us. I've called the police. They're on their way. Next thing, I will stay with her till someone gets here. She's not alone. You understand? I wasn't worrying anymore because I started serving. Do you see what I'm saying? I wasn't worried anymore. And then I talked to her some more, and I said, baby, it's okay. Don't worry about this. It's okay. And I said, are you okay? I said, you can sit here. I said, pull up over here on the side of the road. It's going to be okay. I said, your car's okay. I said, and then I said this, there's nothing here damaged that can't be repaired. True? But now I've been in situations like that before where I've got out and gone to the car, and there was stuff that couldn't be repaired. And I've had to make those calls. Tracking? When we start to love others and start to serve them, it takes the worry off of us about what's going on with us. It gets us out of this loop and gets us out from being worried to being concerned and start making positive differences and not being paralyzed. So the first one was love who? Second one was love who? And the third one is love yourself. Here's the thing I want to tell you about loving yourself. Cut yourself some freaking slack. Cut you some slack, man. It's okay. You're too hard on yourself. You're trying to be perfect, trying to be what everybody else wants. Cut yourself some slack. It's okay. God, listen. When you love yourself, you begin to find people to surround yourself, to lean on. You need to have some friends that you can lean on. There's a slide I got here that says, without a family, man is alone in the world, and he trembles with the cold. See, when you don't love yourself, you think you're an island, you're isolated, and you don't have to have anybody to talk to. You don't have to have anybody to lean on. We need somebody to lean on. Cut yourself some slack and find somebody. Love God, love others, and love yourself. Jesus was asked what the most important commandment was in the whole Bible, and he said, got you, man. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. We talked about that. Love God's number one. Then he says this, and the second is like it, meaning, well, it's second, but it's not first, but it's just love others. How's it go? Does anybody know that one? Love others as you love yourself, which means the reference point for loving others is what? So when you can't forgive yourself for messing up, it's kind of hard to forgive somebody else. When you can't give yourself some slack, no matter how you try, it's hard to give other people slack. When you don't love yourself, you're limiting the love that you can give to others. And I would say God falls in that category of others. So loving God has to do with me loving me and putting myself around people to help me. So the way that we get out of this worry, the way that we move out of this cycle of worry and come back to being concerned about something, but moving out of worry is by loving who? God. Loving who? Others, and loving ourselves. That's how we break it. Today we're about to take communion. We're about to take communion, which is the greatest example of this that there is. This represents what Jesus did instead of worrying about you. Instead of worrying about me, instead of worrying about the sins, instead of worrying about this, He's concerned about it enough to do something. God loved you so much, instead of worrying about you, being paralyzed by what you might or might not do, the times that you might listen or not listen, the times that you're going to sin, which we all sin. Instead of worrying about you, He was concerned enough to do something. And He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die for us, to provide us an opportunity to trust God in a way like we've never trusted Him before. To trust Him enough to move out of worrying about what I do in life and come back to the joy of being forgiven and having life again.